One of the most contentious parts of season 4 of The Chosen was actually something that I didn't think was that big of a deal, but it was Pontius Pilate. I still get the question to this day, why would they have Pontius Pilate be so young? How dare he be so young? Blah, 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 blah. Actually, the actor who plays him is like in his mid-30s, so he's really not that young. I think you're just expecting to see like a 50-year-old bald man with giant muscles and like kind of a soldier attitude, which very well may be what Pontius Pilate was like, for sure. He probably was a soldier before he served in the position that he was as the governor and different things of Judea. But here we see the biblical roundtables as well as Dallas kind of explain what is going on here. Why did they choose for him to be so young? And it may not be the exact answer that you're looking for. It's interesting. So let's jump in. Let's watch this together and see what the Bible Roundtable experts think about Pontius Pilate and how he fits into The Chosen. Here we go.
But one of the biggest things is Pilate himself. So we portray Pilate as young, and some people were really thrown by that. They just, like, I've always seen Pilate portrayed as this older character, and for us, when we were doing auditions, the young guy came in and really captured it. We thought, this is interesting. The notion that Pilate, again, working our way backwards from what we know, might have been a little overwhelmed, a little in over his head.
So this is interesting because Dallas specifically says, well, we were going through the auditions and this younger guy came in. So it wasn't like they were looking necessarily for a younger Pilate. They were actually looking for someone who you may more relate to as Pilate and thinking of Pilate. But this guy really impressed them in the way that he was able to capture the character that The Chosen wanted to have. So that's interesting.
My co-writer described him as maybe the guy who wanted to go to film school, but his dad kind of pushed him into politics, and nepotism got him higher ranked than he might have deserved. Historically speaking, I couldn't find much about his age that we don't know. Any thoughts on that you know? What do we know about Pilate, both in Scripture and outside of Scripture?
He became governor of Judea in about the year 26. So I think this episode portrays him fittingly, that he's been in Judea and the leader enough to feel at home, and yet he still has these concerns about coming off well with his people and making good decisions and looking like the proper representative of Rome.
So to give some clarity here, again, he's saying that Pilate he started being governor in Judea in AD 26. This means that in the Chosen timeline, he's actually been governor for around 2 years, because in season 3, we're actually in AD 28-ish, heading into AD 29 pretty soon in the last year of Jesus' ministry, and then all of that. So, it seems like he would be in power for a couple of years. He would have kind of gotten used to what he's doing there and how he's doing things. And then now he's approaching some different difficulties and different things that he's starting to deal with, still trying to get comfortable in his position overall.
That plays well with a young person in that role, as well as being a newbie on the scene. So I thought that was a nice choice. Typically a prefect, if I remember correctly, probably came out of the military to take on that political role. So he might have been a soldier at one time first. And I liked the name you chose for his wife, Claudia, which means lame, which certainly is a nice label for how she feels.
Sure.
She doesn't feel like she's got much influence.
Right. Is that, when you bring that up, it makes me wonder, in history, it wasn't her name Claudia? Wasn't that known, or did we make that up?
I'm uncertain about that, yeah.
Yeah, I made it up. Right?
I think traditionally her name is Claudia. I'm not sure if we know that historically. I can't remember off the top of my head. We may actually know that historically, that her name was Claudia. I believe someone has said that to me, but I don't know for sure. Someone can look that up for me. That'd be great. Yeah, she obviously plays a pretty big role biblically, understanding her dreams and all that stuff. But it's interesting to see Dallas's response here, how he's probably got so much information and research that he's done in the past that he's just had to kind of let go as he goes into filming and does all these different things. It's interesting to see that.
I thought I remember reading it somewhere, but yeah, again, I'll pretend I knew that it meant lame and that we had some larger significance. But we know that Pilate, by this point, had done some things that were pretty unseemly to the Jewish people, not mentioned in Scripture, but that he had quelled some potential uprisings pretty overwhelmingly. How much do we know of him outside of the Gospels and Jewish history?
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, there was, I believe, debate for a time. Was he how real of a historical figure was he?
Mm-hmm. This was actually a massive, massive discussion. So Rabbi Jason is saying there was actually debate for a time whether he even existed at all. And again, when we look at the Bible, we start looking at all these different figures and we say, did they actually exist historically? Well, time and time and time and time again, the Bible proves to be a treasure map that there are X's all over the place. You go to that X and you will find proof of those people or that place or that thing that was supposed to be there. Pontius Pilate is one of those. It's actually one of the most awesome pieces of evidence that we've seen. Pontius being actually labeled on a stone that has his name on it at Caesarea Maritima. This is where he would have kind of ruled from at that time and done different things here. And so being Caesarea Maritima, seeing that stone and seeing his name on it was one of the key things that shows us, this validity of the Bible is actually massive. And for us to understand who he is, what role he played, and that he was actually real, because the Bible was really the only place that we had evidence of him at all. So it really gave us more confidence in the Bible overall. So Pontius was a huge, huge, huge part of that, along with many, many other things in the Bible that we just keep on finding over and over and over again. Real quick, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. According to our statistics on YouTube, it actually turns out that less than 50% of you guys actually are subscribed. Just check for me real fast if you're subscribed to the channel, and it would really help us out. All right, let's get back to the episode.
And then they found up in Caesarea Maritime actually a stone inscription with his name on it, which
here we go.
If you go there, you got to check it out.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
But again, it just goes to show that the Bible is just so accurate. Every time someone says, "Oh, this is a fictional individual," we find some sort of piece of historical evidence that proves his existence. But obviously, he wasn't a beloved figure from a Jewish perspective, especially because whenever there were the holidays, they would station extra garrison of soldiers, of Roman soldiers in Jerusalem, just in case there was a problem, which made him no friend of the Jewish people from their perspective.
He conducted some violence against the people. And again, it sort of fits the narrative as you've drawn it up, the mistake of a new governor, and he gets his hand slapped by Rome for being too harsh with the people he's supposed to be stewarding on Rome's behalf. And
that was, we have that mention where he says, "I've been reprimanded for my use of force," and I think in Claudia at one point says Tiberius she'll be loath to hear of another insurrection. That's reference to a historical fact that he was reprimanded by Rome for overreacting, which again fits into what we're saying. We're trying to imply, maybe he's inexperienced. He doesn't know how to handle some of these things, so he overreacts, which may explain, again, not saying this is factual, but may explain why when it came to the biggest decision in history, what to do with Jesus, he was like, you know what, I'd rather just let you guys deal with this. I don't want to tick off any more people. I'm just going to go back to bed and
wash my hands.
Yeah, exactly. In Catholic tradition,
I think this is a pretty good understanding overall of who Pilate was and how he kind of went through things. I think it's a good explanation, at least, of why he acted the way that he did, right? Not that I'm saying he was this young or that this was absolutely how it is, but I think it's a good play. I don't think I really have any issue with it overall.
Anything about Pilate that we might not know about, or is it just the same?
Pretty much the same things.
Yeah. Don't know a whole lot. Other than I think there's some tradition that Pilate ended up committing suicide at one point. I read that.
I've heard this as well.
Wikipedia, at least. I don't know if that was accurate. But, I don't know. But yeah. So the decision with the young Pilate wasn't inherently inaccurate. We just know very little.
And since you played the apostles younger, it kind of fits with the look and the feel of the show too.
Yeah, just thought it was interesting. We had some remnants of having, when I watched Gladiator with Joaquin Phoenix as a young guy in charge, and it just seemed interesting to us, something that was worth exploring.
Yeah, I think it does add a really cool dynamic for the show overall. Having this really young ruler who is kind of like dealing with these different things and having to figure out what his role is. Of course, it makes more sense when we talk through how he reacts to Jesus and all this different stuff. But later on in the roundtable, they actually jump back into this discussion. So let me skip forward a little bit and let's go into this one.
Maybe quicker than they do just because of his past. So we thought that might be interesting. But anything else that stood out? Any red flags?
Going back to Pilate, just one other thing is I thought it really interesting that you sort of made his motivation sloth or laziness, that he wants a path of least resistance. Yeah. He just wants his position. He wants to enjoy his life. He doesn't want to mess with stuff. And that's an interesting take on the decision that he makes later with regard to Jesus. Yeah. It's the easiest thing to do. He doesn't, he kind of knows it's wrong. He doesn't want to fight it. So, but, the ways that, people can get drawn into the easy route, kind of giving in. But I thought it was an interesting portrayal of Pilate, rather than being bitter or prudent. It doesn't sound very prudent in this, really, even the way he's being portrayed.
Yeah, and that comes from what again, working our way backwards, just thinking, he's faced with a decision that doesn't seem that consequential. He's done this before. He's executed people before. Why is he wrestling with this so much? Part of it is his wife, who's encouraging him, stay away, don't mess with this guy. But again, we just thought it's kind of interesting to just show him maybe ultimately he's more comfortable not having to make difficult decisions.
And I think maybe even the literal political boundaries could play into that conversation.
Yeah, I think this is a great point here, so let's listen to him.
Jesus is from Galilee, Nazareth, which is actually Herod Antipas's territory, and Pilate is over Judea, headquartered in Jerusalem and Caesarea. And so, Jesus is from that place, but he's in my town. And so, we actually have the gospel account in Luke where he said, oh, you're from Nazareth? Herod Antipas is in town. I want you to go have Herod. He's your governor, so he should be making decisions about you. So we see that, neighboring regions, that playfulness between them, trying to not make trouble in the neighboring region, accidentally or on purpose. And if he's already had his hand slapped by Rome, he's pretty sensitive about it. So, but we're having a discussion about a future episode right now. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah, really interesting overall. I think Pontius Pilate as a character, I think it works really well in The Chosen, and I think we're going to see it kind of develop, obviously, over this next season, and in Season 5 and Season 6. He's obviously going to be there throughout all of it as we get to the more escalation of what's going to happen. This season, we're definitely going to see him with Herod Antipas at the banquet, which is where John the Baptist is essentially killed. So that's going to be a unique way of seeing that as well. We're also going to see more of Atticus and Pilate's relationship and how that pans out. But eventually, obviously, Pilate's going to be a major player and the one that really, truly hands Jesus over to the Jewish leaders and allows for his crucifixion, orders his crucifixion, actually, even though he's washed his hands of it. He's definitely the one that has to call the shot there. So it is going to be really interesting overall, and I'm excited to kind of see how it plays out. I think the young Pilate was a good call, at least for this show here at this time. I think it plays very well. I hope you like this small part of our live stream. If you want to check out the full live stream, go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/thesnipelife. The best way to help us in this ministry and on our YouTube channel. Thanks.